Welcome back, ExitUs Family and new viewers. Speaking of new viewers, kindly subscribe to this channel for more interesting and inspiring videos like this. Do that now, please.
Thanks, well, to the ones that did. Now, in today's exciting video, we're diving into the electrifying speech delivered by Julius Malema at the EFF's 10th anniversary gathering.
Get ready to be inspired and engaged as we break down the highlights and insights from this momentous event.
Don't miss a second of this impactful address that's sure to spark discussions and conversations.
And now, with no further ado, we bring you the next president of South Africa, or maybe all of Africa, the Commander-in-Chief himself, Julius Malema.
The 13, the delegates gathered coming from all over South Africa and decided to form this organization. They formed this organization because they said the ruling party was suffering from ideological zigzags and open dominance of neoliberal right-wing politics were characterizing the ruling party at the time. The ruling party was suffering from lack of integrity and credibility, and it was alienating anything that was advancing a left perspective. The trade union was compromised, the Communist Party was compromised, the youth movement was killed, the Women's League was co-opted into the agenda of neoliberalism. South Africa at the time was characterized by a kleptocracy, where those who were aligned with the government of the day could not face prosecution for their corruption. We observed all of this and decided that we cannot sit back and allow the continuation of the deterioration of state of affairs in our country. And inspired by the Cuban 26 July movement, decided to form an organization on the 26th of July 2013 and called it the EFF. So we thought, as we celebrate its 10 years today, we must share some few moments with the international community, which gets to learn about the EFF from a hostile neoliberal media, which creates an impression that the EFF is an organization that is characterized by violence, that is not different from all other anarchist organizations, that the EFF cannot be relied upon because it is not based on anything tangible. But members of the diplomatic committee, you should know that the EFF is a Marxist, Leninist and Fanonian organization, meaning we subscribe to the ideological and theoretical framework of these scholars and revolutionaries in terms of how we seek to forge a revolution and govern our society. We are an internationalist, radical, militant, and non-sexist and a Pan-Africanist organization, and we operate under the principle of socialism. The EFF is a leftist, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist movement with an internationalist outlook anchored by popular grassroots formation and struggles. The EFF is the vanguard of community and worker struggles and will always be on the side of the people. As an organization, we take lessons from the notation that political power without economic emancipation is meaningless. As a result, this movement is inspired by ideals that promote the practice of organic forms of political leadership, which appreciate that political leadership at whatever level is service, not an opportunity for self-enrichment and self-gratification. EFF is a South Africa's movement with a progressive internationalist outlook, which seeks to engage with global progressive movements. We believe that the best contribution we can make in the international struggle against global imperialism is to rid our country of imperialist domination. For the South African struggle, the EFF pillars for economic emancipation are the following: expropriation of South Africa's land without compensation for equal redistribution in use, nationalization of mines, banks, and other strategic sectors of the economy without compensation, building state and government capacity which will lead to the abolishment of tender system, free quality education, healthcare, houses, and sanitation, massive protected industrial development to create millions of sustainable jobs, including the introduction of minimum wage in order to close the wage gap between the rich and the poor, close the apartheid wage gap, and promote rapid career path from Africans in the workplace. Massive developments for the African economy and advocating for a move from reconciliation to justice in the entire continent. Open, accountable, corrupt-free government and society without fear of victimization by the state agencies. Over and above pillars, the EFF commits to further pillars to complement the 7. They are equally important pillars and are presented here not in order of importance and vitality, but the recognition that they are equally important. We believe in decentralized spatial development and building new cities, public representatives using public services, reduction of benefits for public representatives, progressive internationalism, the development of sports, arts and culture, progressive views on the gender and sexuality question, meaning acceptance of different forms of gender and sexual expressions, considering the rise of right-wing politics, which form the basis of electoral opportunism all around the world and now in South Africa. The EFF has a progressive view on the immigration question, and we believe that we are all global citizens, especially in Africa, where borders were created from colonial conquest and divisions created in the Berlin Conference of 1884. As the EFF, we believe in monetary and fiscal stability, which is anchored on industrialization and deliberate state intervention in the economy. In terms of complementary pillars, the EFF believes on a need for a keen focus on the development of science and technology as an anchor of development in Africa. We believe that there must be support given to research, innovation, and enterprise development. Understanding that South African spatial planning is rooted in colonial pacts and the sharing of our land by our conquerors, we believe in making one city the administration and legislative capital of South Africa. As things stand, our country's legislative capital sits in the city of Cape Town, while our administrative capital sits in this city of Tshwane because of colonial pact between the African colonialists and British settlers colonialists. This must be reversed. Finally, we believe in the transformation of the criminal justice system, that our correctional centers must be rehabilitated instead of creating worse hardened criminals. Members of the diplomatic community, we could speak at length about our organization, its history and its policies, but as you are all aware, we have a 10th anniversary rally at FNB Stadium where we'll expand much deeper on who we are and what we stand for. We hope all of you will be in attendance to experience the Festival of the Poor. Fellow global citizens must, however, touch on some key international issues that require our attention, and first and foremost, we must speak about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It must be understood that as the EFF, we believe that the conflict between these two nations must be resolved, and it must be resolved peacefully. We want to make it categorically clear, however, that we believe the conflict arises because of NATO's uncontrollable desire to infringe on the territorial integrity of Russia by setting up military capacity on its borders. That is the genesis of the conflict. It is the breaking of treaties that were adopted during the fall of the Soviet Union, and that must be condemned as much as we may condemn the war itself. We have noted the communication from Cyril Ramaphosa's office that Russia President Vladimir Putin will not attend the next month's BRICS summit in South Africa. It is our understanding that President Putin's withdrawal is a consequence of South Africa state's reluctance to be firm on international affairs and their inability to resist pressure from NATO to arrest President Putin. South Africa is at the current stage led by an individual who cannot take a firm position on any matter, even if his life depend on it. We therefore want to caution all nations represented here today, especially members of BRICS, that South Africa is currently led by a spineless government that will never meaningfully take forward efforts to grow the strength of the global South and its allies. Any effort to fight against imperialism, the calls for de-dollarization and for an alliance that will place BRICS nations on a stronger footing in the globe will always be undermined by a cowardly government in South Africa. Members of international community, we hope that countries such as China and India will, in solidarity with President Putin, not allow their presidents to attend the BRICS summit. Because what South Africa did to President Putin, it's a serious humiliation of a sitting president. And in solidarity and as BRICS members, heads of states of those countries should also stay away from attending BRICS. South Africa's foreign policy and its sovereignty has been undermined by NATO forces and the USA. Members of the international community, we take this opportunity to call for a meaningful solidarity with Palestine. Under the EFF government, there will not be the Israeli embassy in South Africa until there is peace in Palestine. We must not just pay a lip service when people are dying in their numbers. The people of Palestine continue to suffer unspeakable human rights violations, and their land is annexed constantly. Their children are murdered, their sites to practice religion are destroyed, while the whole world watches. I say so because we are the beneficiaries of international solidarity ourselves. If there was no international solidarity, support to South Africa, we're not going to be where we are. And this is our turn to also show support to all those who are being oppressed by other nations. We want the people of Western Sahara to have their land back without any interference by Morocco. But Morocco and Western Sahara should exist as brothers and sisters and not see each other as enemies. We're asking for peace and long-lasting solution between Western Sahara and Morocco. And that peace should be characterized by the release of the land of the people of Western Sahara. We must not fear intimidation or loss of funding simply because we are too scared to condemn the crimes against the people who violate the rights of others. We want to make the same call with regards to our friends and comrades in Cuba who suffer under the yoke of trade embargoes because they dare to be socialist. The trade embargoes against Cuba must be lifted, as it is inhuman to punish a nation for taking different ideological leaning with regard to how they run their society. The Cubans helped us fight for our liberation in Africa. They continue to help the whole world with quality health care interventions, and they don't send soldiers to go and bombard other people's nations. They send doctors to go and save life and make sure that our people receive their primary health care. We are calling for an end to ideologically inspired sanctions by nations in the West that are used as a tool to undermine the sovereignty of nations in the global South and Africa. We call for lifting of sanctions in Zimbabwe, not that we agree with the people, with the government of Zimbabwe or the president of Zimbabwe, but it is the people, the ordinary people of Zimbabwe, who are suffering under these sanctions. And we want the sanctions lifted, and we want the people of Zimbabwe, particularly those who are in South Africa, to return back to Zimbabwe and make their own determination as to how they want their country to succeed. But that country will never succeed under the sanctions. Africa has been independent for more than 60 years, yet we experience challenges of development even after 6 years of independence. The Western countries cannot live without African continent using our fellow African brothers to destroy ourselves. We want peace in Mali and welcome the dropping of French as an official language in Mali. That is one progressive movement. Doesn't mean French cannot be spoken, but to say we have conquered the imperialists and colonizers and continue to have their languages as official languages is self-imprisonment. We call for peace in the land of Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, who paid the price of his own blood by the coup orchestrated by the Western. We call for peace in Sudan and reconciliation of the Sudanese people. We are tired to see the silence of the international community towards the continuous bloodshed in the eastern DRC. The Western countries supporting some neighboring countries in DRC to destabilize the eastern DRC. We shouldn't find it exciting that African countries can fight amongst themselves with ease, especially fighting around territorial expansions. Africa is one country, it's not even a continent. These borders we see and we experience here in our continent were imposed on us by the imperialists. No African brother should derive pleasure out of killing other African people. We say this because we are advocating for one Africa with one currency, with one legislature, with one military and one president. Because we believe that these small pockets of countries are the ones that make international communities undermine Africa. Just imagine one president of Russia or America calling all the presidents of all countries to their countries to be addressed by one president. We see that as belittling and undermining our continent. We believe that if we have one currency based on our mineral and natural resources, it will be one such a strong currency, and it will place Africa firmly on the international table. Here in South Africa, you must be rest assured that next year we're going to elections and we're going to take power. And there is no coalition that is going to be formed because the EFF is going to be a government alone. We require no one to come and be part of us because the ANC is corrupt to the core and cannot be salvaged. DA is racist to the core and cannot be helped. And the rest of other political formations are formed by multinational companies to protect their interests in this country. It is the Oppenheimers, the Ruperts, who put their money behind certain black faces to create an impression that there is an emerging alternative and sponsor those non-existing political parties with millions of money so that they can continue their control of South Africa. The EFF, since its formation, has never dropped. It is the only organization in South Africa that has been growing. And even the latest research shows that the EFF has surpassed the ANC in the Western Cape and in many other provinces of South Africa. So you can be rest assured, you are not talking to a government in waiting here today. You are talking to government in Ekurhuleni Metro. You are talking to government in Nelson Mandela Metro. You are talking to government in Johannesburg Metro. You are talking to government in eThekwini Metro. You are talking to government in Mogale City municipality. So when we say to you that we are taking over government next year, it's not a rhetorical question. It is a clear declaration based on a scientific research conducted by people who are not aligned to the EFF. So next year, be rest assured that all of you who are here, who may be hosted in a different place just next door here, where the government sits. So we want to take this opportunity to really Thank you for accepting our invitation, and thank you for showing up this morning. And tomorrow we are at the FNB Stadium, and you are all invited. Thank you very much.
Lifighter lami kuwe ebazophela bangithi ngenawe enasho